We are back. Welcome to the Wisdom of Womanhood. I need to do that again.
Rewind. That could be a blooper.
Or not, we just leave that there and be like, yeah, shall we fucked up. The wisdom of womanhood. I can't even think properly. Like my whole body and my mind is just in this gurgle of mess after coming out of a fucking portal in the weekend. So I'm usually on form. If I'm not on form today, we are going to just remember that Chowie's been in a fucking love bubble that has activated me in many, many ways. So welcome to the
There's
Wisdom
a
of
disclaimer.
Womanhood. Disclaimer. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Showie, and as always, have beautiful Pippa. And gosh, there has been a build up to this conversation happening.
I know, not half. We didn't record last week, and I think it's meant because there was still stuff coming up for both of us.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
feel like I'm going to giggle. We were at Mary's on Saturday doing breath work, and I don't know what it is at the moment. Spirit keep wanting to make me laugh. Like, just I'm finding really funny reels and funny things just to laugh. And it was like, with healing, there's all this like seriousness to healing. And it was just this message of like, can we laugh about it too? Like we're having a human
It's
experience. And
ridiculous.
but then I didn't
Yes.
know, I was like laying next to Chris, my husband, and I'm like, I don't want to laugh in case he's going through something really like, really like really not serious, but like something really deep. And I just was like, I just was like wanting to just laugh.
Mm. Well, especially in those spaces, because I mean, laughter can be two things in places when you're transmuting energy. It can be bypassing, but it also, which I'm guessing for you, and it often is with me, is alchemizing. Like
Yeah.
alchemizing of lower frequency energies into higher. When I'm in spaces, I like moan, I laugh. We were actually, oh, okay, wait, how am I going to say this with it still being legal? We were journeying through an experience once with Mary and Libby and a lot of our friends within the space. And we had this point where we were deep, like really deep into some medicine. And all of a sudden, I just started hysterically laughing, like hysterically. And I'm going to tell you why. This is so fucking ridiculous. So we were like deep in breath and we were using some other plant medicines and we were in that space. And there was a group of maybe there were about 20 of us. And I feel a lot of pleasure when I'm moving through some really deep things. I utilize sexual energy as a healing modality. And I also have been known to have ejaculative orgasms. And so we're in this like really deep and like no one's talking, everyone's like breathing and it's like really, really intense. And then I have this thought, this relates. This is so our topic is all about shadow work. This 100% relates. And so we're in it and it's really intense. And then I have this thought come in of do I need to pee or do I need to orgasm? And I had this thing of like, is this like an ejaculative orgasm that's coming and that I'm building into? Or do I really need to pee? And that thought just fucking sent me into hysterics. I was just like hysterical. And then it was wildfire. I start laughing hysterically, uncontrollably. Like my whole body is going through this like flood of energy and pleasure and laughter and light, and then it's wildfire, and then all of the women, we were only women, but all of them are just in this like hub of laughter, and it was so fucking funny. And it's like one of the funniest experiences of my whole life. But no one knew why I was laughing. Like no one knew. And then
Laughter's
eventually, I swear,
medicine, like it's medicine.
totally. I swear, I don't know what happened with time when we were in this space, but I swear it was like 15 minutes where everyone is just in hysterical laughter. And then we managed to kind of calm down. And then I'm like, hey, we're all lying there, eyes closed, like lying down, we're on the beach. I was like, do you guys want to know why I was laughing? And they know me. They are just sitting there thinking, honestly, she's just about to say something so fucking ridiculous. And then I tell them, I'm like, yeah, I didn't know whether I was about to squirt or if I had really needed to pee.
It's
They're
funny,
like, oh
it's
my God.
that story is really quite interesting because when I was with Mary on Saturday, I said to her like laughter's medicine, and I said, "Have you ever been to a laughter yoga?" And she went, "No." And I said, "We should do an event just based on laughter because even like laughing
Absolutely.
without something that's funny, it's uncomfortable." And then I remember when we did laughter
Uh-huh.
yoga I did it 2 years ago when I first got to New Zealand. I just went, I was like, "This is uncomfortable. I'm just gonna go do it." And the guy was so funny, and I ended up getting the giggles. So my giggles would make everyone else laugh because I was just
Yes,
like just, and it because it was like, and the thing
it's
is, it's
contagious.
contagious, and it was like a
That's
Mexican
like my
wave.
laugh.
Yeah,
Yep.
I when you were talking then, I don't know. Every time I watch this reel like you and Mary did, I just it's just the
The one on the
bit,
dance.
yeah, the bit you do with you raw. Can you do it?
Oh, the worm growl. The worm growl. Ugh.
I can imagine like that was happening when you were doing the when you were like, "Is this a pee or am I going to ejaculate?" Oh,
Yeah, it was a real thing happening. It
oh my
was
God.
funny. I had a message from a friend the other day, and she goes, not the other day, it was like a month ago, and she goes, Were you out for dinner the other night at Rice Baby? I was like, yeah. She's like, I thought it was you because I walked past and I heard you laugh from like way outside the restaurant. She's like, there she is. It must be her.
Oh my God,
Oh,
so funny. I love
oh fuck, what a good
Laughter's
start.
great.
Laughter's
I
so
cry.
great. And like
Yeah.
laughter for the sake of laughter. I don't know if you guys have seen on my Instagram, I have a reel that is like me in full blown gigglegasm. So post orgasm and post orgasm hysterical laughter. And it just happens sometimes. I'll just be in like self pleasure practice. And sometimes there's sadness that comes out. Sometimes there's pain. Sometimes there's anger. Sometimes there's full blown fucking rage. And sometimes there's laughter, and I always just surrender to what my body wants to move through. And I will go into these like sessions and I will be like crying in hysterical laughter for 30 minutes
It's just the best.
out the other side. And I just stay in it and I let my whole body feel it. I just let my body be in it. Joy for the sake of joy,
Yeah, just
laughter for the sake of laughter. It's something that we are conditioned out of. And as adults, the invitation is always there for us. Who the fuck decided that adults can't just laugh and have fun and play and joy like we did when we
yeah,
were children?
exactly. The reels, I don't know, the obviously Instagram's listening to me because I'm like pregnant now, and it's like it's
Uh-huh.
shown it's shown me a new level of reels that I've never seen, like all the pregnancy reels that people create, and I'm just in hysterics. And Chris comes into the kitchen, and he's like, "What are you watching?" Is like these reels, and I'm like, because when I laugh, I cry like you won't believe, and I'm like, I couldn't speak. I was like. I could not speak it out. I was like, these reels are fucking hilarious. Like, and I was just addicted. And I spent like half an hour just going on, and they were all there, just all of them. And some of them were like relatable to like, being pregnant and the hormones, and you feel sorry for your husband. And it was just, oh my God, it was so funny. I shared a load at the weekend, and I was like, I just relished in it. So that's what social
Mhm.
media, like when you look at like the light and the dark, the shadow work and all that. It's like I was like, there's social media can be, shit, but it can be so like funny when you see it that way. So I just said, I'm just gonna sit here with a cup of tea and I'm just gonna scroll through some funny reels and laugh because I need it. And I was in tears. I was absolutely in tears that I needed it after a week of shadow work.
That's so good. Have you seen the ones with the pregnant ladies where they have like their tummies, they draw on their tummies and then they've got like the eyes are here and then the mouth is down here and they have their
No,
pregnant tummies
you'll
out.
have to
Oh my
send them.
gosh, I have to find it. They're so funny. And then they put their arms up in their jerseys and it's like a hat and then they dance. And it's so funny. It looks like these like the little short dwarf people dancing with their big pregnant
Oh, you have to send
bellies.
me that. Yeah, send me
It's
please.
so funny.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna give you the joke now actually.
Oh, fuck.
It's sim it will take me like 5 seconds to read, but it's so funny. I'm not thrilled my wife is into bondage, but my hands are tied.
Seems very well timed, this joke
Oh,
of
really?
her. So the other disclaimer that we're going to put out is that if you're watching the video at some point, I might need to stand up and just give my body a little bit of a rest because my ass is completely consensually covered in welts and bruises. Like absolutely fuck me. Fresh, as in less than 24 hours ago, because the love of my life, this incredible man, has very similar interests in a lot of life. We have very similar interests in a lot of ways. And we also are very sexually compatible. And so we love journeying through all of the places when it comes to sex. And this conversation is actually a really good segue into diving more into this conversation around shadow. For me, over the last few years, I have found so many parts of myself through exploring shadow places, dark places, taboo places within my own sexual expression. And some of that has involved power exchange through dominance and submission. Some of that has been through kink play, impact play, bondage, non-sexually in the element of shibari. And talk about sitting with your greatest discomforts. Talk about sitting with the parts of you that you hide from. I have without a doubt journeyed through some dark, transformative, incredible places through elements of sexuality. And so, yes, my love and I, at the end of a beautiful weekend together, which included many things, not only in the space of connection, but yeah, incredible conversations and experiences, and the intimacy was this multifaceted exploration of tantra and breath and softness and romance and kink. And so yesterday we went into our first exploration using impact toys, flogger, cane, and paddle. Really beautiful that we just bought, actually. I might give them a shout out, the company we bought them from last weekend. And yeah, it's sitting with incredible physical discomfort. So for those of you that have never really come across these conversations, obviously, just to reiterate, communication, consent, boundary setting, all of those things are so fucking important, and all of the things that we advocate for and that we went into in this. So I was actually completely able to influence the situation the whole time. The moment I said no, then we would have stopped, but it was guided and it was always checking in. And so I have some gnarly bruising and welts and marks on my body today, which I fucking love. And of course, this day when I have to sit down and record the fucking podcast.
But it's just like, can I just say, like, what I love about what you've just said is how it, like you said, blends into shadow work, because you've got bruises and you've got welts and redness and whatever. It's like they're physical, and our wounding isn't physical, like as in like a lot of our wounding that's from inner child is not seen to the eye. So when we meet people, or we have difficulty with people, or communications or boundaries get stepped on, we can't physically see that. We can see broken arms, we can see broken legs, whatever. When there's physical broken bones, we can see them, but we can't see broken people inside, because we've all got wounding. I think that's like the when you were talking about the element of like the uncomfortableness of that, like that's kind of a kink of mine too, like even though we don't do it a lot because it's not really Chris's. he would, because I love it, but it's not something that we both would want to do, which is fine because I've explored in it before. But it's that uncomfortableness, isn't it? The uncomfortableness of like that boundary. Where's the boundary? And obviously you have your safe word, and it just bleeds into shadow work, and how like we can't see people's wounds, but we have, when we meet people, is just like have that compassion and that depth to that they could be really struggling today and we wouldn't even know. It's just that coming back to that place of we don't really know a person, especially their wounding. And like you said before we press record, you only know what people say and their actions and how they're doing, but we actually don't fully know what's on in their head. And that's a gift I would love to be able to have. We could have a supernatural gift. I would love to just be able to step into someone's, when we say step into someone's shoes, we can't physically actually do that because we're not them. We're not wired in their way. But if I could just have a split second of, I could just so like just download all of the like everything. I think I'd just be like, now I understand. It's just that depth of understanding and compassion, and if we could have that, I think it would just be so different how we see each other.
Well, we can have that.
Mm,
So, firstly, I really want us to, as we navigate through this, eliminate any terminology around brokenness,
yeah.
because no one is broken. No one is, regardless of any experiences that anybody has ever had. And there are no elements of us that are broken. We
Mm,
are an accumulation of every single experience we've ever had up until now. Some of those experiences have been incredibly challenging. Some of them have not, but we are that accumulation, right? But we can do exactly what you just said
mm,
through creating more awareness and alchemizing of our own shadows within ourselves, so that we, regardless of needing to know, because there's this needing to know thing, we don't need to know everyone's experience they've ever had. We don't need to know exactly what is happening within a person. What we can do is see someone showing up in the expression of themselves through their behaviors, through their words, through those things, and wrap them up in compassion and understanding,
mm,
and see us, if we're talking about two people in a dynamic where I am showing up through my own perception and in the experiences that I have had up until now, I am seeing them through that lens and they are seeing me through this lens. Is this person displaying things that align with the way that I would like to be treated? Yes or no? And that's a very simple yes or no. Really, it is. I think people overcomplicated that. And so if it's a no, okay, so what do I need to do to maybe put some boundaries in place, which can still be with love and doesn't need to be this harsh fucking electric fence? Or if they are still in alignment, cool. So how can I show up and best support? Again, without needing to know.
yeah.
We can be in a space with someone, and I think the more that we become aware of energy, the more that we pick it up. Like we can tell if someone's energy is, a bit off. Um, but just go, how can I show up? How can I just show up as a kind, compassionate, caring person right now? And so it's a part of the human experience, right? Is that we are never going to know, first of all, how somebody else is living their life, but also we're never going to know the perception that other people see us through. And
Mm,
we can't be attached to that either. And so in this navigating through, I think there's like two parts of this conversation, right? There's the navigating through the external shadow. And I think there's also layers to that. It's like the wounding of people that are close to us, the wounding of the collective, because there's massive shadow wounding within the collective. And then also separate, but not separate, the shadows within ourselves. Because actually, there's a direct correlation between how much of the shadows externally we can accept and alchemize with how many of our own shadow aspects can we completely accept
mm,
and alchemize. And alchemizing isn't getting rid of. That's not I need to turn every part of me that feels uncomfortable into this beautiful fucking glorious part of me. No, that's not what it means. It means, can I sit with it and allow it to assimilate into my being and be accepted and felt fully? And can I see the lessons in it and the beauty in it without trying to get rid of it, but was seeing that, looking at our attachment styles, looking at our early childhood experiences that might impact how we see ourselves and see the world, looking at traumatic experiences, looking at, things that we may have come across as adults that have created fragmenting in storylines that are love-based. If we look at all of those, none of those things are negative. They're just experiences that we've had, but some people are so uncomfortable looking at those things.
yeah.
It's like we don't look at them. Well, then we're never going to see what the lessons are inside of them.
Yeah.
Within this conversation, this beautiful man in my life. He's very aware of having an avoidant attachment style, which you can see very much was from his younger years, and is very open about it and knows it. And we sit down and we talk about it, and he goes, these are some of the things that I do, and I'll come and then I'll need some space. And he's, man goes into his cave and does that. And he said, I just want you to be aware it's not a reflection of you. And I'm like, great. I said, how can I best support you in that?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, if you notice it, then, maybe just remind me. I said, would you like me to do that verbally? Would you like me to say, hey, babe, I can see you're kind of pulling back a bit and just reminding you I'm here. Whenever you feel ready, come back, bring your energy back. I'm here. We've kind of developed this metaphor around it of like, I'm just going to be standing outside the cave, and you can go in, but I'll still be here. And I said to him the other day, I'll just like plant some flowers out there. So it's really beautiful when you come out, and there'll be this glorious garden. And, but how fucking helpful is that conversation as
Yeah.
opposed to the non-reflection, which then leads to the harmful and the hurtful behavior?
Yeah.
Like unintentionally through the lack of awareness of your own self.
Yeah.
And that's the really looking at your whole self and diving into the parts of you that maybe are a little bit fucking ugly and maybe a little bit messy. There's parts of me that are ugly and messy,
Same.
exactly. There's parts of all of us. And there's parts of the collective and the shadow within the collective that are ugly and messy. And, we can see it on a collective scale. This is something I've really been sitting with in the last couple of months, with a lot of things that are happening on a collective scale, war, genocide, control, division of gender, a lot of things that are happening on a big scale. The people that I'm noticing are in denial about what's happening, or do not want to engage with what is happening, or go like, oh, that doesn't affect me, or that's them and that's not me, or even try and buy into the division of these people are good, these people are bad, or any of those stories that are coming out. Often there is, again, the correlation between an individual that has not gone, I also have dark and light within me.
Yeah.
Like I remember journeying through this and sitting with the fact that people that are bombing children, people that are actually going like pressing the buttons and bombing children, I sat with, there is a part of me as a human, and that is a human that could be capable of that.
Yeah.
Like obviously there's brainwashing, there's manipulation that's happening, and there's a total separation from soul and love and essence.
Yeah.
Absolutely. However, I am also a human, and there is a part of me that could be capable of those things under these circumstances. Fuck, sit with that.
Oh,
like
yeah.
sit with
Yeah.
that and let yourself feel that you have the capability to really harm others and really harm yourself. And I think it's that people are so afraid to look at the things in them, not that we choose them. We could all go out there and elicit behaviors that are extremely hurtful and harmful to others.
Yeah.
We choose not to. And there's a real reclaiming in that. And we look at our shadows and we go, I could,
Yeah.
and I choose not to. And that's the empowerment side of the shadow work, is going like, I still have choice and sovereignty in how I navigate through the world, but I have accepted that there is a part of me that is capable of those things. Whew, holy shit.
Oh, yeah. I agree
That was a lot.
1,000%. Like and that's shadow work in a nutshell, because that thought of that I could possibly do that is uncomfortable. And
Yes.
that's shadow work, isn't it? Like you go into unconscious parts of yourself that you may not even know yet. And that's probably why a lot of people are resistant to it, because it's finding things out that you may not like, that you may not even, you might look at yourself and go, that's awful, or that's really shit. I've just called myself out this morning to Shadowy about some really shitty things that I was thinking. That makes me human. It doesn't mean that's the essence of who I am, and that's what I love about Shadowy. It doesn't mean that's who I am. That's just a part of me, a wounded, unconscious part of me that feels that way because of a certain wound or because of a certain situation. I think that's the whole point of, like, I had this conversation with Chris about, you always have a choice, don't you? Like there's all these different paths you can take. We can ultimately just choose something right now that would make us go down a completely different path. And I think that's within your power. That's the free will you have in this life. But I think it's what you said before about other people is I've been talking about values. Like, what do you value in friendship? What do you value in relationships? What do you value in yourself? And if you know, if people aren't bringing that value, what you value in certain things like, you know, trust, honesty, communication, you know, it's okay to say, I'm stepping away from that. Same with shadow
Not
work, because
reciprocating.
sometimes shadow work for me can get really intense and really like uncomfortable and
Mhm.
upsetting, and I can get quite angry with myself because I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling that way. I shouldn't think that way.
Ooh,
The judgment
which
of it,
is
you know, like,
orphaning a part of yourself.
yes. And then I sit with it and go, but it's okay if I do feel that, or I do want to
Mm.
say that. It doesn't mean that's who I am to the core. That's a
Mm.
small part of my essence. That's a small part of my wounding, a small part of that self, of that human self. It's not the true identity. It's not the true essence of Pip. And I think there's so many judgments around it too, like the judgments around shadow work, like how we can judge ourselves when we're doing shadow work too, like, oh my god, that was awful, like, oh god, like even this morning, just, but when I say those things in a safe space, i.e. showy is a safe space for me, when I say them out loud, even though I can feel the resistance of, oh, once I've said them, it's so empowering for me. I'm freeing because I'm just being honest with myself.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if a value of mine is honesty, then I've got to expect that for myself too.
mm, yes. Yeah. And so, okay, I feel as if a lot of this conversation so far has been in the realms of the language that we often use,
Yeah.
being in spaces of personal spiritual development. And I can sense that there might be people listening to this like, what the fuck are they talking about? So maybe we can kind of simplify a little bit and then give some tools around how we can explore and navigate through these
Yeah.
things and things that maybe have really helped us in our journeys, any
Mhm.
experiences that we've had, and your recommendations that we can give. And so, okay, when we speak about shadow work, and it's kind of like a term used in the space.
Yeah.
And there's so many different interpretations of that. So, for the sake of this conversation, what we are talking about is navigating through self-reflection and sometimes alongside modalities or practitioners that support you in that help you to see patterns, behaviors, experiences that you've had in your life that have an element of discomfort or potentially a negative connotation around them, and seeing them, working through them, evaluating, reflecting, doing the nervous system and the somatic therapy work to actually allow those things to move through the body, because often they are attached with incomplete stress cycles, trapped emotions, beliefs that are sitting within the body as well. And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about uncovering parts of you that your ego brain will often try and avoid you looking at, because, and this is the why, and this is why a lot of people from, a neurological perspective don't want to do that, is because there will be a part of you that is hardwired into not wanting to look at it because it feels like a threat. Because looking at the parts of you that are uncomfortable and um, maybe shift your identity that you have of yourself is a threat to your system. And your system, not your whole system, this very primitive part of your brain goes, oh, there's a threat to my identity if I start uncovering these pieces of myself. And so I don't want that, because identity death feels like physical death. And so I'm going to avoid it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's often what can occur. So then the resistance comes up around it. And it's really beautiful for us to recognize that piece. Like, I don't remember anyone saying that to me in my journey. And I would start to go into things and then I'd be like, I don't want to fucking do this. I don't want to do this. I feel so uncomfortable. I don't like it. And it's like, oh, great. Okay. If I had known that there was a part of my brain that was just trying to keep me safe, that probably would have really helped me. And so, yeah, it's the journey of uncovering. So that's on an individual scale. And then when we look at collective shadow, and shadow within other people. Again, individuals, same thing. the seeing others as an accumulation of their experiences and separating behaviors that may be harmful from the truest essence of the person. And when we can do our integration of shadow on that basis, as in like a co-creative basis with other individuals, the work for us and the opportunity for us there is to go, these person's behaviors, thoughts, beliefs, language is, if it isn't kind, compassionate, caring, and within that, it can also be, there can be some questioning and some discomfort in
Curiosity.
that, but totally, but if it's not those things, then often it is coming from a wounding place. And so what our opportunity to do is to go, okay, so that is, some shadow elements. And can I still see that person as an expression of love? Because it is so fucking easy to go into the victim place and be like, and they're this, and they're a fucking dickhead, and they're a fucking bitch, and they did this to me. They made me feel like this. They did this. Like, oh, talk about perpetuating a victim cycle. And it's an easy thing to do. And again, because there's that primitive part of the brain that doesn't want, I'm just going to put this down, that doesn't want anything to feel threatening to the system. And so that's the opportunity with alchemizing shadow within individuals. And then the collective part of it is the ingrained beliefs around like racism, sexism, any kind of like homophobias, like ageist, discrimination towards religions, towards anything that's sitting within the collective that is a separation, a blaming, shaming, victimization of any parts of humanity. And we can see it when we look at the Her Story episode, the absolute femicide, that is collective shadow, which is trying to suppress the feminine. And we see it with the masculine as well. And it is I do actually think it's our job as individuals to be living a life that is helping to bring to the surface the collective shadows that are still sitting there in society, regardless of what society you sit in. I can guarantee there is some kind of collective trauma that's sitting in a shadow state. And so what we can do is individually show up to alchemize those. And how do we do that? Is we do not fucking treat other people any differently based on any of those factors that we perceive are different to us, and therefore we are better or worse than. Those stories are not real. They are based on many, many centuries and thousands of years of an attempt to separate us as people. And it's been very intentional because divided, we are disempowered. Easier. So, the invitation in that is just noticing, when you're out going about your day, are you making judgments towards strangers or other people based on social conditioning that is not actually the truest essence of who we are as humans? That is not love-based. Are you looking at people of different races and making stereotypes and judgments against them? Do you have beliefs around what all men are like or all women are like, or all mothers or all fathers or old people or young people? That is social conditioning that is based on not love. It is based on fear, and it's based on shadow. And we can all contribute to helping to dilute those stories on a collective level as well.
I was about to go here, like just like a woo. There's a with shadow work for me personally, I feel like before I started diving into shadow work, the Pip as a person was trying to fit in. So like for me, it was the fitting in. So I would mold to fit in, as we say. And there's a fine line between fitting in and belonging, isn't there? Like there's this, we think they're the same when we're not aware that they're not the same. So fitting in is molding yourself, is becoming, speaking a certain way, wearing certain clothes just to fit into a category or fit in somewhere. Belonging is that, hey, here's my shadow, here's my light. I see you. I see the shadow in you. I see the light in you, and you belong. I see I see you. There's not even much to say when you feel belonging is just, I'm here. I'm here for it. And I think that's what I've been working on in New Zealand, is that I want to feel I want to feel that belonging sense of that I've always belonged here. Like it's my birthright to be belonging here. Like no matter where I am in the world, I belong, and it's what you said about the shadow work and how it brings up the uncomfortableness, and a lot of us do avoid it. And for me, in simple terms, is the triggers. You know, that's the word that's being thrown around everywhere at the moment. And it's true, like we have triggers, we have things that are going to be like, oh, that was really, I was in a great mood. And then such a body came along and said XYZ, or
They did this to me.
they did this to me, and then they made me angry and they made me feel this way. And it takes time, because I
Yeah.
learned from Shadowy with language. It takes time to reflect without that victim blame on a person,
Mhm.
because you realize that, and I've just gone through this the last 48 hours, we can't blame the person for how we feel. And we're trying to teach our kids that at the moment. It's like, well, he made me angry. I was like, he
Mhm.
can't make you feel anything you don't want to feel. You know,
Mhm.
you allowed him
And
to make you feel
also,
angry through, yeah.
yeah. And also recognize the response though, right? We can
Yeah.
do both things. We can empower ourselves to know that no, and you know, I think that this really needs to be said in the whole array of emotions is that nobody can make you happy.
Yeah.
Nobody can make you
Yeah,
fulfilled.
exactly. Yeah.
Nobody can make you, you know, like peaceful. Nobody can make you safe. Nobody can make you angry, sad, any of those things. That is a truth. It is our response to another that then decides how we respond. But let's listen to that response still. You know, let's empower ourselves and not dismiss it, but be like, okay, that situation has brought up a wounding in me. And now I have the opportunity to sit with it. You know, now I get to have a lesson that's come up in this conversation, in this interaction. Like yesterday, gosh, I was in tears because this man sees all of the ways that I have been holding myself back. You know, he is very good at seeing through into the shadows of people. It's an
Yeah.
incredible gift that he
Yeah.
has, you know, but to sit there with someone that, you know, can see all of those parts of you, and it's like none of me was left untouched and all of me was out on the table. And
It's
I'm
like the
sitting there and
vulnerability. That you
I'm
feel vulnerable in that work, don't
vulnerability
you?
and then
Yeah.
you know and then processing even like the relationship dynamic, and I voiced it to him. I said it brought up this feeling of me of inadequacy within the relationship because I felt as if I was the one that was being dissected. And he's so great, you know, he also owned some things that he's like, okay, how could I have better supported you? You know, but one of the most beautiful thing that he said, and it's landed and it will be landed forever now, as he said, that's how I show love. That's how I show love, you know, is by seeing and then believing and supporting someone through the witnessing of their shadow, essentially. And what a fucking powerful gift, you
Yeah.
know. But I had to sit with well, not I had to, I chose to sit with even the emotions that were coming up within that. And it's like you said, it's not comfortable, but there's a fucking opportunity. There's an opportunity. You know, and the thing that I often sit with and that I really want to be able to plant the seeds for is, don't you want to know who you could be if you sat with all of the parts of yourself and you accepted them? Don't you want to find out? Imagine the life you could have. Imagine the relationships, imagine the experiences and
Yeah.
opportunities if you let yourself be the complete, continually evolving, but fullest version of you in that moment, based on you actually sitting with all of the parts of yourself and loving them into the light.
Yeah. And who would you attract into your life who sees all those parts of you and loves you anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Because all week I have been meditating, I've been connecting, trying to channel, download, because I got into it so much in my with my gifts, and I just felt the calling, especially being pregnant and just feeling things differently. And I spoke to you about it. I was like, I just need to go into that depth of connection. And there was this beautiful vision I had, and it was shown to me by it was a guide called Ishmael, and I was like, I know that name, and I've Googled him, and he's part of uh he's in the Bible, but it's obviously depicted wrong and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, the vision was about collective wounding, about religion, about this control, about this, corrupt, convince. We're trying, and he showed me this divide. You mentioned the word divide, and
Yeah.
it was must have been pre-Jesus because it looked very old, the village, and he was showing me like there's this group of like 500 people over here, and they're all dressed very, you know, basic. And there's a guy speaking to them saying, duh, this is the, and he's like being very like, you know, authoritarian, very like, this is how it's going to be. And, you know, I'm your leader. And people were like, just people needed that for whatever reason. And then you had these people in between, like looking at, and there's a group over here, about 20 people. And the person standing on the stage just held a beacon and didn't say anything, just held a beacon. And there was like 20 people. And he was showing me, I was like, because obviously there's a reason he was showing me this vision. These people were just like, oh, which way do I go? Like they were so confused. Do I go this way? Do I go that way? And he was trying to say to me, like, it's not right or wrong. It's not to say that's the wrong crowd, that's the right crowd. They'd forgot to listen to themselves. They'd not listened to their own intuition. They'd not trusted their own choice. They'd not taken into consideration, what do I need? Like, is that what I need right now? Or is that what I need right now? And then it was talking about education, how like education back then wasn't very like it is now. And people, you know, that crowd seemed a bit more like you need that leader, that teacher who was very spoken. But this beacon of light, he just stood there, was so peaceful. And it just showed me like how that's caused this divide. Like that's the wrong crowd, that's the right crowd, and that's the right religion, that's the wrong religion. And it was like that crowd was just spirituality, that was just connection, that was just the original, just, you know, there wasn't really much word for it. It was like the Tao, God, universe. Like there was no really like description. And this left crowd was religion, corruptiveness, control, convincing, where this was flow. It was like force and flow. They're the two words I got. Flow, force, flow,
Mm.
force.
Mm.
But it was also light, shadow. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
light, shadow. So, but then it's like to some people, that would be shadow, that would be light. To some of the people, that would be shadow, that would be light. And there's no right or wrong in that. They exist together. They exist as
Yeah.
one. They exist as whole, because to some people shadow means this, to some people light means this. And I think that's what you said about, are we going out judging people? Oh, well, you're Christian, and oh, well, you're Buddhism, and that, you know, it's just, hey, oh, is that you? For me, I'd be like, oh, that's beautiful. What does that involve? What's your practice like? Like there's just this, and like you said, when we're divided, we're easy to control, we're easy to convince, we're easy to corrupt. And I think, but it was like, out of that, the collective wounding was, if I speak my truth or I show my beliefs, my true beliefs, I'll be punished or killed for it. And that
Yes.
then it showed me like Jesus and Buddha and all these different masters, and like Joan of Arc and Martin Luther King, and there was so
Mm-hmm.
many. It was just like a big list of them. How when they spoke up their truth and their beliefs, they were punished and killed for it. So there's a collective wounding around that too, is like, hey, if I don't sit with my own belief and go, hey, you know what? Like, I love you and what you believe is great, but I believe this. And then each
Yeah.
person going, oh, that's beautiful. I've never seen it that way. Like, oh, like tell me more about that. It's just this divide has caused this, like, and then what's that causing now? It's causing the wars. And it always
Yeah.
will. It will always be there as a reminder of, that's what's causing the war, is this divide of, hey, you're not the same as me. You believe something else, and you're a different country, you have different land. And it's like we're all in this together. And it was just showing me this, like, why couldn't those two groups just be together and like and help each other and coexist in this beautiful oneness of like, I'm going to teach this way, well, I'm going to teach this way, and how beautiful is that? Can we collaborate?
Mm.
So that's what I got, and I wanted to share it on here because I thought that it's just, I literally closed my eyes and I was like, okay, what do you need to show me today? And it was just literally bam, the vision was like that. And I wrote it all down. I told Chris, and Chris went, wow, that's so profound. I said, it is profound, but I was like, to me, it's just something that needs to be shared. So that's why I've just
Absolutely.
shared it.
And we're remembering, you know, and I've held on to a lot of hope and faith for the way that we are moving forward as a collective physical experiences of humans, and also as a collective consciousness. And that I do think there will be some people that will spend their lifetimes underneath the umbrella of fear and um, And that's okay. That's people's journeys. We cannot control other people's journeys. However, more and more and more, I am seeing these communities and co-creative spaces where we're coming together, and as people coming more into this oneness and support and care and deep fucking love and connection, and this, we don't need to be the same. We can celebrate our differences. However, how can we support one another to move forward? And even we look at it from our understanding around unity consciousness, it is having drastic ripples on other people. More and more of us that step away from this division concept into unity and togetherness. And I have an unwavering belief and vision for where we are going as a species, which is really fucking exciting.
When you mentioned species, so Chris, my husband's a scientist, and his work is in animals. So every week he's always researching and what our closest relative is chimpanzee. Okay, it's not apes. We are closely related to apes, but chimps is our mostly match DNA. Now, I'm not going to go into the science because I'm not going to embarrass myself. But me and Chris and I, we've been sitting outside of a night just because the stars have been so bright on a clear night, and we just get into those deep conversations, and I love it. I have a cup of tea, and he's got his drink, and I start asking it, like a little kid with my dad, because I used to with my dad all the time, is like, what's this? And what do you think of this? And what do you think of this? And I said to him, one thing I learned from Chris's podcast was I didn't know this, and this is why I love listening to him, because I just learned so much. There's chimps and bonobos. Have you heard of bonobos?
Yeah.
So I'd never heard of bonobos. It's like, well, I'm an animal person.
I used to work at Wellington Zoo.
Yeah, so they split off. So I can't remember when it was. It's like, I'm not going to embarrass myself because I didn't add the timing, but they split off thousands of years ago. And when you look at bonobos, they're very kind and soft and very like, when you watch them on videos, they're very like they're just when a bonobo gives birth, all the females will protect and go in like this beautiful circle. And there's a lot of like, oh wow, like there's a lot of similarities with like us women, what we used to do in red tents. But you see chimps, and they do similarity thing, but chimps have got that crazy gene, like they're just mean to each other and they fight and they just. So I was saying to Chris, like, again, the vision I had was there's been this split off, and I'm like, okay, what's caused the bonobos to become like soft and sweet? And obviously they're protective of the groups and stuff, but chimps are just like savage, they're just like and I think Chris said if a human was amongst bonobos, say, or apes, there's softness there, and they wouldn't want to attack you unless you obviously caused, but with chimps, they just see you and want to kill you basically. So I was saying, okay, let's look at humanity then. So there's this divide in humanity. We've got these, like, I'm not going to label anybody, but you've got the behaviors of nastiness, behaviors of judgment, behaviors of all this, like, but you've got all like the kindness, compassion. So there's this split off. And Chris was saying there needs to be this homo sapien. We need to like genetically, if we could genetically get out these shitty genes of like treating people like shit, and we were talking about it for hours, and I was just like, is that possible? Like, is that possible for us to, because we've been fighting each other since the dawn of time for resources, for food, for survival, and it's like, when can we just say, hey, I fucking love you. You're a human being. Like, I've got shit to work on. I'm fucking ugly at times. I feel like shit at times, but that doesn't give me an excuse to treat you like shit. I'm going to say, hey, I'm not feeling like I feel like shit today. I'm just going to take some space for myself. And it's like, there's just not that. I hope we get there. I pray and
We are
hope we
doing
get
that.
there. That's what I'm saying. Like, when we get
Look
to
at our
stage of,
friends.
yeah,
Like, we are. It's not a thing in the future. And it doesn't need to be
it's
a genetic
happening
thing.
now.
It's
It's
a
like,
spiritual and a consciousness
yeah.
thing. That is happening now.
And it's the ripple effect of like how you, that's how I saw it, as like the chimp and the
Mm-hmm.
bonobo of like
Mm-hmm.
the divide in that, like you see it all over the place, like the judgment. And it's like, hey, like exactly what you just said. I've just come to you today and been like, oh, this happened at the weekend, and you're like, you then probe me, you ask the right questions to be like, and I'm like, oh yeah. And then I feel safe to respond because you give me that safe
Mm-hmm.
space to
Mm-hmm.
respond. And that's
Mm-hmm.
fucking amazing that we have that. And like you said, it's happening. It's just, can we speed it up? Like it just, I think it's, but again, it's all divine timing. It's all in divine.
Trust.
Yeah. And I think, but isn't it interesting when we start to see that from animals teach us so
Hmm.
much and what we can learn from them? Like
Hmm.
I love watching primates. I could sit on YouTube and watch them for,
Hmm.
but like look it up, like watch chimps and bonobos and see the difference. Like it's really interesting because obviously we evolved from,
I've heard of this. I've seen some stuff on the comparison and stuff
yeah,
before.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just how maybe that's what happened with us as humans. I don't know. I really don't know, but it's just
Well, we did.
interesting. Yeah.
There's lots of evidence throughout history of extremely harmonious civilizations.
Yeah.
You know, you say since the dawn of time we've been fighting. That's not true.
No, yes,
And
not
actually,
all of
there's
us.
been a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
suppression
Hmm.
of the evidence of harmonious
Yeah.
civilizations because it wasn't buying into what the
Mm.
agenda needed to be, which was in order to gain power, we need to take. And
Mm.
so there's even been hidden evidence of extremely harmonious
Hidden. I
civilizations
love what
that
you
have
said, hidden.
lived.
Yeah.
And there are still very harmonious civilizations that live, a
Mm.
lot of which actually do not have anything to do with
Mm.
majority of what we live in
Like one
Western society. A
one
lot of
place
them are
I've been.
completely doing their own things in other
Yeah.
places.
One place I've been to is Fiji, and they're very like that. They live in a
Hmm.
village, and it's like the baby's born, and not just the mother looks after the baby. They all just
Yes.
look at. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that. I love that. It reminds me of bonobos. Like, oh my God, there's a new baby coming. We're all gonna help
Hmm.
out together. And it's like, I love that. And when I was in the village with the little girl, and she took us to the waterfall, and she just, oh my God, she was so cute, and she just said, "Our village is so lovely. We all take care of each other." And I was like, oh. And then Chris and I go on a cruise in June. We're going up to Papua New Guinea, and when you look at Papua New Guinea and the tribes there, like some of the islands that we're going to, they've said on the disclaimer, we may not be able to stop there because of like civil unrest and stuff like that. So they've still got the
Yeah.
tribal like I
Hmm.
think it's like 130 tribes in Papua New Guinea. I wasn't sure, but Chris like wants to go there. It's been one of his dreams. But it's funny, isn't it? Like different tribes and how like it fascinates me the evolution. Like Chris, that's what Chris does,
Hmm.
evolution. But it's like it is happening, like you just said, it is happening now. Like we're
Hmm.
starting to wake up, we're starting to realize, hey, like, is that okay? Is that like, should I be saying that? Like just being curious of who we are. And
Yeah.
I watched a video this morning of Laurie Ladd, and she said, you are becoming, she kept saying becoming more of who you are. And that is scary because you're finding parts of yourself
Oh
that you've
my
never
gosh,
seen.
I know.
Yeah. Like, oh, like and becoming and you know what's I know what I love about it as well. Like let's look at shadow work from a laughter perspective is you finding things out that may have been uncomfortable that you can sit and go, hey, that I actually like that, and that's something I really want to work on. Or,
Hmm.
especially in sexual experiences, how many women
Uh-huh.
and men are suppressed sexually because they're scared to say, hey, I'm into this. Do you want to explore
Hmm.
it? And then but they're just
Hmm.
so with I'm the same with Chris. Like I say, hey, can we try this out today? He's like, yeah, and it works. It
And with
works. It doesn't. It doesn't.
curiosity,
Mm,
with curiosity, like, whenever I go into like kink or impact play sessions, I never go in with an agenda, but I know I'm going to meet parts of myself, and I just go like, I'm going to be open to whatever I meet through this. But what I can do is go, I'm going to be present in the experience. I'm going to sit with any
yeah.
emotions or discomfort that come up. I'm going to push my edges, push my physical, mental, psychological, emotional resiliency, like push the edges and the boundaries of those, as long as obviously I always have been, but in a safe container. Um, and it's going like, as we encourage you to investigate your own shadow parts and those of the collective, let's all go in with a what could we learn from this, not a we're going to do this so that we can evolve humanity. Like the natural
Yeah.
byproduct is that, but if we can just go in with what can we learn, well then that opens up to even more than you might be expecting.
Mm,
I've had some stuff come up in sessions before, and if I'd gone in with an agenda, I never would have found them. And it's
yeah.
gone deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm like, holy shit. you know?
But I think
Yeah.
it's great
Hey,
that
there's
you can
that.
start connect the dots in your own life as well. You do like even though
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable and it can be really challenging at times, like you
Mhm.
realize, oh, and the light bulb goes off, and you think, oh, that's
Mhm.
why I feel that way, and that's why that trigger comes up, and Oh yeah, and you just start, and it becomes like just a second nature for me. Like you get into a routine of, oh, I was triggered today. Let's work on it. When I feel like that before, and it just becomes like you can just do it in your not in
Habit.
your head. But I've got again, we're going to
Yeah.
talk about practices now, like some practices to do,
Yeah.
like tools. You know, that it just becomes this like brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
For me, that's what it is. Like if I've got a trigger or if something's come up and I'm uncomfortable, like I've just been going through that the weekend, I'll sit with it and go, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I deepen in this? How can I soften in this? How can I love more in this? How can I have more compassion in this? Mm,
The one thing I was going to say before as well, and kind of within this remnants of this conversation around within the space of sex, is can you also witness parts of yourself that are deemed as taboo or ugly or whatever they are from the collective and be okay with that? You know, it's like me within spaces. I know that a lot of people have resistance and it's not for everyone. But a lot of the experiences that I have, society is like, oh, that's so dark, or that's so bad, or that's so this, or that, it's so that. I'm like, do you know what? Some of the stuff I'm into, there are societal beliefs that
mm,
are the beliefs are sitting in the shadows still because of a lack of understanding and, you know, because of all these things. But it's, you know, can you look at elements of yourself, particularly within, you know, the space of kink and fetish and everything, and go, do you know what? We don't have to put a good or bad
yeah.
fucking association on things. Just like the array of emotions, there's no good
Mm,
or bad emotions. Yes, there's a frequency that is associated with emotions. However, it's just all of it, you
yeah.
know, within experiences. Again, you know, it's like, if we go into a conversation with someone and there's something that comes up that we feel really uncomfortable in, that's not a bad conversation.
Yeah.
When we go through a relationship breakup, that's not a failure. It's not a bad thing. As
Yeah.
long as
Yeah.
you choose to show up to the lessons, you know, it's all very neutral. It's just our perspective that changes the association with it. So can we navigate through life and just be like, okay, what's here for me, and not be swayed by societal beliefs? You know, even in the relationship dynamic that I'm in, it's very non-traditional for a number of reasons, which will be,
Mm,
we will disclose as the months go on. There's a reason that I can't
yeah.
say too much about it at the moment. Uh, but it's, you know, like this is a man in my life that I might not see for months at a time because of the work that he does and because of the travel. And, you know, I know as more is disclosed about the relationship container that we're in, is I'm going to get some questions and people are going to be like judging it and having these
Yeah.
ideas on it. But can you know yourself enough to be like, this is the right fucking thing for me, and I'm
And I
showing up
chose
in this
it. Yeah.
container that is helping me grow and thrive, because not only are we both creating a space for growth together, but I'm choosing to fucking show up even when
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And as long as we're doing that, then we are going to be in our own state of evolution. And that's really the only thing that we're responsible for. And it's the only thing we can actually influence.
Yeah. Chris said this morning when he went to bed last night, he was channeling and meditating when he goes to bed, and he said, we forgot to see the beauty in the world and see the beauty in all of it. Like we said, like you said, we look at the taboo, we look at the negative, we look at this, like just see it all as beauty. It's like
Yeah.
blossoming of a flower. It's like all of it, even shadow work is blossoming of a flower.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of it. He said we're just as humans, we've got to connect that beauty and gratitude of like we're just on this beautiful planet and it's got so much to offer us. And I think like we are like I just you just wake up today and the sun's out and I'm like, oh, and even when it rains, I'm like, oh, I love the rain. Like it just you just perspective, like your perspective changes and your mind opens. Like that one, once your mind opens, it's just like um
Mm-hmm.
but even like I said with taboo topics, like the stuff that I would love to talk about on here about Chris and I, but I've got to respect Chris's feelings, you know, because it's not just
Mm-hmm.
about me and that's
Mm-hmm.
boundaries and stuff. But it's like, you know, it's just that's one thing that I struggled with for years was boundaries until I started doing shadow work. That really helped me to set those boundaries of
Mm-hmm.
you know where my lines are of like, oh, that's uncomfortable for me, or that, you know, boundaries are like that should be a topic is boundaries, because a lot of people struggle with boundaries, and to a degree I still do, but it's a work in progress as we all are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think tools for me the shadow work, I remember doing something called thought therapy journaling, and it was so, so, so amazing. And I read it in a book somewhere years ago, and I just thought, oh, it makes sense. So I kind of just like adapted it and started to do it. So it's basically, if I can remember right, you write down the trigger, and then you put like, what does this remind me of? So it kind of like was reminding me of like when I was, I don't know, just the first memory that comes to mind. And then I had like tools to kind of like, it was like, there was a wording like, what's the wounding? Is it rejection? Is it abandonment? Is
Mm,
it disappointment? What there's about 30 different ones. And then there'd be tools to kind of like rewire it. So I'd do some affirmations, I'd do some tapping, breath work, meditation. And I just started
mm,
to like add on to it. So I started journaling and journaling out, and I get in nature and I ground and ask for the guidance. So tools obviously are different for each person, but I just find like depending on the trigger and depending on where I am and
mm,
depending on what I would just, and then obviously having a safe person to explore it with. That's really important for me. Like having someone who I can say, hey, I felt like this today, and I actually call myself out on my bullshit. Can I just tell you what I was
mm,
saying? And then the person being like, I'm really proud of you. Well done. Like exactly what you
mm.
said this morning.
Yeah. Mm. Beautiful. So in that conversation, you've mentioned so many great things. Journaling, affirmations, breath work, meditation. I would add in, if you know that you have had particularly dysregulating traumatic events or developmental trauma, or potentially even generational trauma, seeking an experienced practitioner to support
Yeah.
you through navigating through some of that, because it's really important to me as a practitioner that any recommendations that come from this podcast are not going to put you in states where you actually need the support.
Yeah.
So obviously Pippa and I work in these spaces. So yeah, knowing when it's the right, not knowing that it's okay to ask for help. I could literally name like 10 space holders in the last X amount of years of my life that have supported me. Like I've done some of this myself, and a lot of it and a lot of the deep dives has been supported by other people. Whether that has been holistic health practitioners, breathwork
Yeah.
facilitators, partners, lovers, friends that have helped me through those spaces. When we start to navigate through this stuff, please don't do it alone.
And
It can
also just a
be
quick
quite
disclaimer as
intense.
well, from what you said, from what we've learned as being in this field of work, we all want a quick fix. We want it just to feel better. We
Yeah.
want to feel better. And I say to my clients, any new client that I have, I'll say, I know you want to get through this really quick, and I know you want it to be a quick process, but I promise you I will go as quick as your nervous system will let me. Because if your nervous
Absolutely.
system is like, whoa, time out, like I honor that in a client,
Mhm.
like I see it, like I see the resistance, and I'll go, what are you feeling right
Mhm.
now? I feel resistance. Okay, let's take a step back. And I just don't push past that, because that can be really, like I said, reliving the trauma. So for me, I just say, hey, I'll promise you I'll go as quick as I can, as long as your nervous system allows it. And that's that
Absolutely. Yeah.
dysregulation of regulating our nervous systems. So finding practitioners that are trained in the field as well, like we've seen it quite a lot, is
Absolutely.
I am doing my degree, which I'm really proud of, and I'm working through all
Mm.
of it, and it's getting to the really deep parts of it now where I'm doing my big assignments. So I'm learning a lot. I learn a lot from Shawi. But find
Mhm.
people you resonate with, find the
Yeah.
people that, if it's not Shawi and I, totally fine. We don't take offense to that. Find people that you go, oh, I just really resonate with such a body. Can I just reach out to them
Mhm.
and find that safe space, you know, because it's really
Yeah.
important to
No,
have
I
the safe
agree.
space.
Hmm. Yeah. And like we kind of said, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom as
No,
well. Like
do some
I've had
laughter.
some of my most potent like shadow journeys has been during sex. And it's
Yeah.
been pleasurable at the same time. Like my like, so to give connotation for those of you that are sitting there like, why the fuck would she get bruises and welting all over her body? What then followed on from that play session was the fucking most intense orgasms that you can like even fathom. And that's this dance between pain and pleasure,
Yeah.
sensation and pleasure. And yes, this shit can be intense to win the shadow work. However, the alchemizing, so many of my clients have moved through all these big things and then they get this flood of peace. I had
Mm.
one of my clients say to me once, I feel source in my organs. Like
Mm.
I feel that love. I can literally feel it in my organs. And that was out the other side of a really deep somatic therapy session. You know, people like, I've never felt peace like this. I've never felt joy like this. I've never felt hope like this. I've never felt bliss like
Mm.
this. I've had clients have full energetic orgasms out the other side of sessions, you know, and it's because we're creating the space for more pleasure and more joy through the looking into those parts of ourselves. So I mean, it can be fun.
Well, yeah, and
But
exactly what Chris said about beauty of life. Like we've been given
yes,
sex and how beautiful is sex, and
yes,
just like it can take you to places that you can't imagine sometimes, like
yeah,
self-pleasure. You and I, shall we, are big on self-pleasure and
so big.
on self-pleasure. Like if I didn't have self-pleasure, I think I'd go a little bit nutty, to be honest.
Mm,
But it's important for me because I want to honor my body and honor the parts of
yeah.
me that give me pleasure. Like it doesn't even have to be a full orgasm. Like it can just be touch.
Yeah, we're
Like,
not attached to that pleasure for
yeah,
the sake of pleasure.
yeah, letting go
I
of
was
attachment.
I was lying in the sun. So my love and I were lying in the like nude bathing out in the sun yesterday or the day before. I remember now. Time did weird things. And like he was lying there next to me and then he'd like drifted off like into sleep. It was so beautiful. And I was just lying there, like just gently like stroking my body slowly, even just down through the shoulders and arms and legs, and like feeling presently, so presently the energy of this man beside me and the sun coming down on my skin and the feeling of, you know, my fingers on my body. And it's so beautiful, you know, and I feel as if we often rob ourselves of those experiences, which can be so teaching in themselves. You know, I was just lying there like, oh, okay, beautiful. I'm getting this reminder to come more into presence, to come more into full sensation of body, to come more into stillness, to come more into softness,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, there's so much there for us. Book recommendation would be Existential Kink. If you haven't,
Oh,
have you read
nice.
Existential? Yeah,
No.
100% would recommend that. It's not just about sex. It's about like fucking reaching your edges and pushing them.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just going to grab my journal because there's actually a poem that I wanted to read that I wrote the other day.
Oh,
But if you've
awesome.
got any other recommendations,
Yeah. Book recommendation is Nicole LaPera, How to Do the Work. She is awesome. So she is the holistic psychologist on Instagram. A lot of people have heard of her. She just brought another book out, How to Be the Love You Seek, but How to Do the Work. Oh, I just love that book. She's awesome. Nicole LaPera, the holistic
oh,
psychologist.
that's a great recommendation. Um, I wrote this poem which feels as if it aligns with this conversation. When my love was driving down on the way here on Friday evening, and I really cultivated some space of beginning to drop into the energy of the container and went into some reflection, and then wrote this, which feels really beautiful to share. Okay, I'm going to read it. Here, I have landed in the birthing place of the divine. Before everything, before nothing, there was this, where time is simply fractals of incomprehensible beauty, where space is boundless, a fortress of infinite possibility. Here I have landed, not gracefully, but undoubtedly, unshakably, unashamedly. I claim my presence here. I make myself known here, for I know the task that has been placed upon me. I know the path that has been set. Every incarnation, every placeholder throughout the generations, every potential timeline has been leading to this remembrance, this resurrection, this restoration of love, of a love that most have forgotten, a love that shatters the illusion of separation, a love that courageously stands in the storms of chaos, undoubtedly, unshakably, unashamedly, a love that eradicates even the most buried remnants of fear, a love so fierce that it intimidates those with fragile hearts. And so it all makes the most perfect of sense. These lifetimes of broken-hearted existences of pain, torture, death, betrayal, everyone leading me here to this reclaiming of my own heart, a return to the divine, before everything, before nothing, where time is simply fractals of incomprehensible beauty, where space is boundless, a fortress of infinite possibility, here, with this heroic heart, to remind everyone of the love they've forgotten.
That's so beautiful.
That's why we're here.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful, the way to end.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
thank you.
Yeah, I hope it's been a good episode for you guys and not too
Mm.
hot and heavy. Take some time to reflect. If you've been listening to us today, just give yourself some time just to reflect if anything's come up for you, any triggers have come up for you, uncomfortableness. Reach out to us if you need any help, support, and just take some time for you. Ground, self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Mm. Love you guys. Thanks for being in the journey with us.
thank you guys. Love you too.
I love you.
Love you too.
Mm.